do you have a tether of sorts to know exactly what's going on with your RV if you're remote, and getting your dog out if there's an emergency?
If you love dogs and RVing, this video is for you because today I've got an RVing with dogs expert with us, and she's going to answer all your important questions and probably talk about some things that you've not even thought about. And be sure to stay to the end because she's going to tell us the best way to find dog-friendly places while we're out camping. But first, if you're new here, I'm Randy, and I help you make big memories in small campers because weekends are just too short. And with us is Charlie from Forever Best Friends. Charlie, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and what makes you an RVing with dogs expert.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the invite, Brandy. I really appreciate it. This is always a lot of fun to talk about traveling with dogs and traveling in RVs. So my name is Charlie Grace. I am with Forever Best Friend, and we travel all over the country. We've had a Class C. And right now we have a Class B RV. We've been doing this for quite some time, and we really have a method and a program as to how you can safely and effectively really make the best out traveling with your pet.
Well, that's really exciting. And what kind of dog do you have?
So currently we have a rescue dog. Her name is Miss Rosie Bell. She is a lab mix. So she's actually a lab mix with dwarfism. So big body lab with little body legs.
Oh, that's great. That's really fun. I've been doing a lot of camping, and I've never run across a campground that doesn't allow dogs. I ran into a campground where Princess, my dog, wasn't allowed to go on the beach, but I've never run into a situation where a dog is not allowed at a campground. But I've heard that there are campgrounds where pets and dogs aren't welcome. Do you have any experience with this, or what can you tell us about this?
I do. And I think it's a really good point. So when you make a reservation somewhere, or if you're pulling up to a campground just for the night, it's always nice to ask ahead of time. There are a lot of private campgrounds that do have some restrictions on where they can and cannot go, or whether they're not allowed, or certain breeds. So it's always nice to call ahead.
Oh, so there can be breed restrictions as well?
Absolutely.
This is probably the most frequently asked question, and that is it okay for me to leave my dog in my RV unattended while I'm at a campground? What are your thoughts on this?
So let's do one thing. First, is your dog used to being left alone? That's really important because you want to make sure that you're not being a nuisance to your neighbors. If your dog is, barking or causing a commotion, that's number one. Number two, do you have a tether of sorts to know exactly what's going on with your RV if you're remote? So if I decide to leave my dog at the campground so I can go to Asheville, North Carolina, and want to go tour the Biltmore for 3 to 5 hours, am I able to know what the air conditioning's doing? What's the temperature? Is it getting too hot? Or do you actually have another way of someone coming into your RV and getting your dog out if there's an emergency? So you need to look at those kind of things. But a lot of people either have a remote tether of knowing what the temperature is, and or they get a dog sitter.
Oh, that's a really good idea. We very rarely leave our dog Princess in our RV. And when we have done that, we've made sure that the temperatures outside are pleasant so that we don't have to worry about temperatures. But what you mentioned here about regulating or being able to remotely monitor the temperature inside your RV is a good point. Do you have any suggestions about the best application or the best way to do this?
There's a couple things you can do. The newer RVs actually come with an app called RV Master, which actually you can do. It's sort of like a smart home app where you can do things that tells you what the temperature is and you can go from there. However, there's also things called a Nimble or a Waggle, which is also Wi-Fi related. So you have to understand that no matter where you are, you have to have a decent cell signal in order to get that information. But here's my but part. But if you realize that your temperature is going up, 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 and you're maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours away, you need to make sure you have backup so that someone in the park can actually open your door and get your dog to safety.
Well, that's a really good idea. I've heard of people leaving a note too on their door, maybe with a phone number in case there is a situation or the dog is barking. What do you think about doing something like that?
It's great. And some things I like to tell people, safety's first, no matter what you do. So if you use a Google account, I always suggest you get a Google number so you're not giving over your personal cell phone number. So use a Google number and then they can text and call you just like a regular number.
Oh, that's a really good idea. I've seen people with pet enclosures or pet fences at campgrounds. What do you think about these?
So for little dogs, it's great. Number one, it gives them some exercise and a great way to get out there. It's not very good for medium to large size dogs, but a lot of campgrounds do have rules and restrictions on if you can or cannot use those. So that's another item that you need to call ahead and talk to. But if you use them, make sure that you go all the way around your camper and they can't slide underneath, because that does happen too.
Oh, I wouldn't have thought of that. That's a great suggestion. You don't want your little guys sliding underneath there, do you?
No.
Okay, they can get in a lot of trouble under there. Okay, that's good to know. Let's talk about campground and campsite etiquette, or dog-friendly campsite etiquette. What are your suggestions for this?
So just like with when a regular campsite, how people don't walk through, you're not supposed to cut through people's campsite. That's like one of those big campground etiquette things. The same thing goes for dogs. So even though you may have a really small campsite and your neighbor next door has a really big campsite with a lot of green grass, it doesn't mean that you're supposed to be walking through their campsite. So that's number one. You need to think about where's a good place to walk your dog or take your cat, or, take them out for a little bit. And number two, always, always, always pick up after your dog. It doesn't matter if there's a bunch of goose poop beside it. That wasn't your pet. That was somebody else.
That's my number one pet peeve.
When I see dogs to be left behind.
Yeah. So there's always going to be some child, some grandkid, someone running around, and they're going to slide into first base and they're going to find that present you left for them.
Yeah, that's not good. Our favorite thing to do with Princess while we're camping is hiking. She loves it too. And as she's getting older, we've even incorporated a backpack and a sling that we bring with us just to make, it easier for her. We always make sure that we have a collapsible water dish with, and of course, our doggy bags. Are there any other things that we should be considering while we're out hiking with our dogs, especially maybe in unfamiliar places?
Absolutely. So especially if you go someplace like to the desert, just so you know, doggy booties are not just for wintertime. If you're going to a terrain that has very sharp rocks, your dog can get cut. And the other thing you might want to think about is a dog safety kit to bring with you. Because if your dog does get cut on their paws or something happens, you might be far away from a place where you could bandage it up and help them get back. There's also a few things that you might want to consider, which is like a backpack for your dog. If your dog gets hurt, are you going to carry them back in your arms, or can you put them in a sling in your back and bring them back that way?
That's really important. You had mentioned dog medical bag. What would be some of the items that you'd recommend we bring with us and include in that?
Absolutely. So you want to have an antiseptic and an antibiotic, just like for a regular human. And instead of little Band-Aids, you want to have some wrap and gauze so that you could wrap it up at that point in time. We're not thinking about the big things, and things can happen because dogs get into things and they'll find snakes and they'll find other critters. I know, but the things we don't think about are dogs also like to go places where there's poison ivy, and that poison ivy can get on their hair. It just takes a little bit and then it can rub off on the human. So things we just need to be aware of while we're hiking.
I never thought of that either. Oh, so many good takeaways. What about fleas and ticks? We've found wood ticks on Princess when we've been out in the woods and more remote areas. And we typically will put some rubbing alcohol on the tick, and then the tick will oftentimes remove itself just because it wants to get away from the rubbing alcohol, or we'll take a tweezers and pull it out if we need to. Is that what we should be doing, or am I doing that wrong?
No, it's really hard. And fleas and ticks are, fleas are, it's harder to see and they're all over the place. Ticks are a little more easy that you can see and try to get them out. My biggest thing is, one, make sure that you're giving a preventative medicine ahead of time. Don't pretend to take your dog out for a hike and think they're not going to come back with something, because it will happen. Number two, just every day, like from the head to tail, check your dog. Check and see if there's something in their ears, around under their legs, things like that. But as far as taking them out, the alcohol is a good idea. Not a bad idea. You want to try to do the best you can, but they do need to be removed. And sometimes it's easier said than done on different breeds of dogs because they're a little more sensitive.
Yeah. Yeah. They don't like you poking around with the tweezers oftentimes. And
no. They don't want to stand still while you try to do that.
My suggestion, though, real quick, if you have to keep your dog still and they're not used to being still, is get something like a licking mat. I don't know if you've ever seen a licking mat. It's like a silicone mat. It's got ridges on it. They're really inexpensive, $5-10 tops. Slather some peanut butter on it. Oh. Keep them preoccupied with something while you're doing it, and it won't be that hard.
Fabulous idea. That's a great tip. Okay, so I like hiking. What are some other things that people can do with their dogs while they're out camping?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things. So depends on where you are. If there's a beach or if you go fishing, or spending time with your dog can mean so many different ways. You can go explore, urban exploring, and you can go into cities and you can take them for walks and eat outside in patios, which is great. A lot of museums are outside, and even some bigger cultural events. I know in the Huntsville area, there are places that used to be an old factory. It's called Low Mill. That's inside that they allow dogs. So just take a look at where you are and see if there's any things that you might want to really enjoy, whether it be botanical gardens, art museums. You'd be surprised where they allow dogs these days.
And you're going to share with us how to find some of these locations too,
Yes.
coming up. What do you think that everybody should bring with them and have in their doggy travel bag?
Okay, so this is really important because when you travel, you have to have all the information you need. So the first thing you want to have is a copy of their medical record, their updated shot record. Because if something were to happen and you need to go to a vet that you may not be unfamiliar with, they're going to ask those questions. This will have their updated rabies and things like that. That's number one. Number two, we talked about a safety or emergency kit. That's always handy to have. You want to have that. I like having, if your dog is nervous or has any kind of anxieties or stuff, I like to have, like a thunder shirt or a really nice harness that gives a little compression. That's always handy because you just don't know. It's a new environment. Remember, you know where you're going, but your dog doesn't know where they're going. So you don't know when that door opens, where are they going to land? It's going to be very different. And then, of course, like an extra harness, an extra collar, an extra leash, things like that. But making sure you have all of those items. And then, of course, your travel water bottle or your travel dog bowl.
Well, that's really good stuff to have with. So what are some of the ways that we can prepare our dogs for travel?
So this is one of the biggest things that I get to talk to people about, because people get a puppy and they want to go camping tomorrow and they're all excited, and they get there and they're like, why isn't my dog liking this? What's wrong with my dog? Well, it's really not the dog's fault. The dog wasn't prepared. You need to, if you have the opportunity of having, say, your RV in your driveway for a week or two before you go out, having the dog go in and out every day, feeding them in the RV, showing them that that's not a scary place will really help with that transition as you start to really go camping more.
That's a great idea. And I had a viewer ask a question that's similar to that topic, as she asks, camping should be relaxing for all, but how can our canine buddies be relaxed in a foreign environment? That means we can't relax either.
Yeah, you're right. So if puppies aren't relaxed, people aren't relaxed. It's sort of like with kids as well. The difference is if you have a dog that's a little more high strung and needs a little more relaxing, you need to get into more of a routine. That's going to help a little bit, as well as if you need to look for an outside help. My biggest when it comes to trying to find a something that will relax them, other than like doing a warm bath or something of that nature, is if you can find a CBD. The only CBD product that I will recommend these days is made by veterinarians. It's called Companion CBD, and it is a treat form. I would suggest trying that on a very minimal dose and working with your veterinarian, but that's something I always like to have on hand just in case.
Okay, that's a good idea. And you said it comes in a treat form?
It comes in a treat form. It's crystallized CBD, and therefore it's made by veterinarians. And it's something that, like I said, if you have a chance to take a look at, and that actual company has a form where you can talk to a veterinarian through their website.
We'll leave that information in the video description below. I had another viewer question. A Peterson elementary counselor asks, when I arrive at a new campground, my dog wants to go out every 2 hours. How can I prevent this?
Well, that's exciting. That means the dog is excited and wants to go outside. You can have a couple different ways of looking at it. Maybe we get a tether of some sort and we tie your dog on a long lead so that they can smell all the sights, and they can smell things and hear the sights and sounds. It may be that they need to mark their territory. It may be, okay, this is mine. I need to make sure I tell the world this is mine. So watch out, world. But I would suggest get a tether and sit outside with your dog and let them do what they need to do before trying to push them back inside.
Well, that's a great tip. Talking about a tether leash, is there a specific length that you recommend? I suppose it all depends on the area of your campsite and your next door neighbors, but is there anything that we need to know about that?
Well, you need to be respectful of your neighbors. You don't want to have a really long lead and then have it be able to touch someone who's walking by. So you might want to bring a couple options. I like cotton leads. They're one of my favorites because even if they get wrapped around, they're not going to really cut off circulation too much. Some of those wire leads can be really, really painful for the dog.
I was camping one time and I saw a dog that did not have any shade, and it was in the 90s. And I felt so sorry for that dog. I think it's also important that we just don't let our dogs out and not pay attention to the weather and the conditions.
Absolutely.
And I would imagine that over time, this is something that they'll get are used to, and you'll start training your dog. Is that what you're saying?
You train the dog, but you also train yourself. So if you're responding and worried and praising the dog just sees you giving the dog attention while this is happening. So you've got to redirect.
That's good information. All right, we've got another question from the same commenter, and they say, on a weekend trip, my dog will not poop. Does that mean the dog's tense or not comfortable or nervous?
So it's not uncommon when you travel, your dog may not eat the same amount of food that they normally do when they're home, or they may not want to poop. It could be two things. They just want to wait. It's not their bathroom. I think everybody has their favorite bathroom to go to, and they just don't want to go there. This might be an anxiety and a stressor thing. So this is something that I would recommend trying, something like a companion CBD to try to relax. It also depends on the number of days you're out. If you're out for 5 days and your dog isn't pooping, that's a problem.
So what would you say? A day or two? Okay. I mean, never
48 hours.
Okay. Oh,
48 hours.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Deanne Walding asks, I have a senior dog. Abby's 14 years old. Are there any special considerations that I need to be aware of?
I love senior dogs. They're
Me
awesome.
too.
Oh my gosh. So yes, you want to be aware of things because as with any senior, health problems can happen at any time. And you need to be extra special careful if you're taking them for walks. They can't move as quickly as other dogs. If there might be an aggressive something coming towards them, you just need to be very careful. Their hearing and their sight, things like that happen. So they may not see that skunk around the corner as quickly as you think.
And I think as we know our dogs, we know what to look for and we know what stresses them out. So just maybe be extra cautious and aware of those situations.
Absolutely. And if you have a rig of an RV where the stairs are really tall and they can't go up and down the stairs, you need to think about, is it time to get a ramp? Things like that. You just need to make it as easy as possible for them.
Is it an actual dog ramp then that you can attach to the stairs, or how does that work?
Absolutely. So they make different kinds of ramps that go like up into pickup trucks or go into RVs, and they're carpeted and they're really easy to use. So I always suggest one of those if you have room for one.
That's a great tip. Terry Zalowski, Terry, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right, asks, is there a safety topical bug repellent for dogs?
Ooh, that is a great question. There are lots of natural oils and natural things that people have talked about. And I know just like we use citronella in different areas, or smoke can sometimes repel bugs. As far as putting one topically on a dog, I don't really suggest it. It's never been something that I would suggest. Now, there are products out there that are like sprays, but my bottom line is, as long as we're really primarily focusing on fleas and ticks, of course, mosquitoes can cause heartworm. So you also need to make sure you have your heartworm prevention.
Okay. Thank you. And another question Terry asks, should dogs be drinking from river waters?
So I always like to say, if you're not going to drink it, your dog shouldn't drink it. That's the easiest way to put it. There's a lot of bacteria in a lot of rivers and streams and creeks, and I get it. And I know dogs will drink out of toilets too. So you have to look at that. But to be safe, I would say no.
Okay. Another question we've got is, are you a bad parent to camp without your buddy? Restrictions may be getting tighter regarding pets, but some functions we can't participate in due to the length of time away from our pet. He has a good doggy camp kennel and loves to go, but we don't want to be selfish parents. How would you respond to that?
I understand that. It's a tough thing when you're trying to figure out what to do on those things. I think every situation is different, and I think you need to do what's right for you.
Okay, Jennifer responded to that and she says, I feel the same. I thought it'd be easier too. It's actually stressful. They tremble the entire time while driving in the car. Oh, yeah. Any suggestions for that? And Princess, as she's gotten older too, she will do a little more trembling in the car when she used to not have a problem with traveling. What can we do to help with this?
So this is not uncommon. I mean, we talked about, getting them used to the RV. The first thing you do when I get a puppy is I get them used to the car, because we're going to be taking trips. We're going to be going to the vet. We're going to be doing things together. And that's one of those things. But as they get older, you don't have control. You don't have the focal vision as well many times. And things are happening so fast. It's very fast to process. And that can be very stressful on a senior dog or an older dog. So what I would consider is, just like I said, trying to come up with either a compression compression. One of my favorite harnesses is from Canine Wear. It's a compression harness, and it's really easy and highly breathable, and it really does help on things like that.
So how does that compression work? It tightens and it makes them feel more secure. Is that the concept behind it?
When you think about your favorite blanket and how you love when you're all nice and cozy and warm, or babies are swaddled, it really is just that. It's a very nice snug harness. It's not tight underneath their arms, but it really gives the same effect. Same thing as a thunder shirt, only the harness is nice, because if you're in an emergency setting or a place where a dog might want to escape, you can always keep them on a lead.
So when I'm camping in an unfamiliar area, I like to go explore, and we sometimes want to go into town and find restaurants. And I just typically Google pet-friendly restaurants, and this is hit or miss. And as you mentioned earlier, there's so many different things that we can be doing with our dogs while we're out camping. So I think you have a favorite app that you can share with us and tell us more about how to find pet-friendly and dog-friendly places while we're out camping.
So there are some really great apps out there and some really amazing websites, but one of my go-tos, and I like this because as we go and we travel to different places, you can also input your ideas, sort of like a Yelp, but from a dog-friendly perspective. It's called gopetfriendly.com. So gopetfriendly.com is an amazing website. It's also an app, and you can put in Nashville, Tennessee, and you can see where you could take your dog, from restaurants to places of interest or attractions or events. It's really a neat way to start. And when you're going to a new town, you're right, you have no idea, and they've really done a great job.
Well, what a way to explore as well, because going to a new area, I might not know what's around me, or I might not know that there's a dog-friendly museum that I might have been able to go to. So this will probably open the opportunity too to discover new places that your dog and you will both enjoy.
And something to think about is a lot of people will decide on the town they're going to go to, and then they find out what's dog friendly. What I tend to challenge people to do is look at the site first and find out what you think your dog would really enjoy. Do a vacation based on that perspective one time and see how that changes your planning from that way forward.
Well, I know Princess loves camping, and I just say camping wouldn't be the same without her.
If you want to see some of mine and Princess's fun camping adventures, I'll leave a link to a fun video I think you'll enjoy watching in the video description below. So I'll see you over in that video next.
I really appreciate your time, and I will leave a link too to all your information in the video description below. You have a YouTube channel called Forever Best Friends, and I know you do and offer a lot of great suggestions on your channel. So I encourage people to check your channel out as well.
Thanks. And we love making new friends, and it's something we really enjoy. And don't be surprised if you're camping, we walk around to all the campgrounds and we take pictures of all the dogs we meet. So if you see us walking around the campground, don't be surprised. We'll come and say, "Can I pet your dog?"
Thanks again. I really appreciate all your knowledge and helping share your knowledge with us so our pets are happy while they're out camping.
Thanks again.